This episode of Sleepy is proudly sponsored by Shopify. When I first started this show and started podcasting in general, I learned a lot of stuff the hard way. Writing, editing, recording, producing, marketing, social media. It was a lot to start doing this, and while I love knowing how to do all those things now, I definitely would have loved to know about tools that would have made my life simpler, like I do today. Tools that make my business and my life just run smoother. Well, Shopify is definitely one of those tools. It is the business behind the business. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel to businesses just getting started. There's hundreds of ready-to-use templates to build a beautiful online store that matches your brand. Shopify has tons of helpful AI tools to help you build out and fill your site in no time. It's also really easy to get the word out with easily made email and social media campaigns. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. So if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into reality with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Otis. Go to shopify.com/OTIS. Shopify.com/Otis. I'll put a link for this in the show notes. Thanks. This episode of Sleepy is proudly sponsored by Quince. I've been sleeping with Quince's European linen sheets for a while now, and honestly, one night was enough to understand the hype. They are so light and airy, and I look forward to getting into these sheets every day. Especially on these warmer nights, they've made such a difference, keeping me cool and comfortable till morning. These sheets are also woven from 100% European flax linen, so they're not only luxurious, but heirloom quality, getting softer every time you wash them. And it's not just the sheets that they have. Quince also has ultra plush duvets, quilts, pillows, and shams, all made with premium fabrics like organic cotton, breezy bamboo, and even silk that's gentle on your skin. It is everything you need to level up your bed without paying the typical luxury markup. Quince partners directly with top artisans and cuts out the middleman, so their bedding is about half the price of similar brands. They also work only with factories that meet high standards for safety, ethics, and sustainability, which definitely makes me feel even better about using them. They are wonderful all around. So let your bed match the season with cool, relaxed bedding from Quince. Go to quince.com/sleepy for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/sleepy to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/sleepy. I'll put a link for this in the description of the show. Thanks. Hey, my name's Otis Gray, and you're listening to Sleepy. A podcast where I read old books to help you get to sleep. I've got a really lovely summary story for you tonight, as you might have been able to tell by the title. It's kind of like a kid's adventure story, which is always so fun to read. And before we get to the bedtime story tonight, I just want to profoundly thank all of our brand new patrons on patreon.com, which is a website where you can pledge a couple bucks for an ad-free version of Sleepy. So, this week's amazing new patrons: Jules New, Lisa Hadley, Genevieve, Lynn Delp, Breely, and Stephanie Bond. Thank you all so much for being a part of making this show. It means so much to me that you actively went and did this. Thank you. And for anyone who doesn't know, the names that I just read, they're brand new supporters of Sleepy on patreon.com. And that is just a place where you can directly support people who make the stuff that you like. So if you like Sleepy, maybe it's helped you get a better night's rest, then you can directly be a part of making the show by going to patreon.com/sleepyradio and donating even $1. At $2, like I said, you get access to the ad-free version of Sleepy. $5 gets you access to a poetry feed with over 50 episodes you've never heard before. And but even $1 means so much to me. And no matter how much you donate, even $1, I will so happily read your name on the show after you do. So, if you too would like to be a part of making the show, like the names I just read, you can go to patreon.com/sleepyradio. Thank you. And as always, the music you're hearing is by my good friend James Lepkowski, and the cover art for Sleepy is by Gracie Kanan. Tonight's story is by an author that I believe I've read on the show before. I know that I've read her on my own before. She's amazing. I've loved her short stories that I've read in the past. And it is Kate Douglas Wiggin. This is a story based in California. And it's called A Summer in a Canyon, a California story. And it is about a group of kids who are in California in the summer, daydreaming of all these adventures and, outdoor excursions they're going to take. They give each other names and new identities, and it is just a lovely little romp through the mind of childhood in itself. And what a pleasure to read, as is all of Kate Douglas Wiggin's stories. I myself have really enjoyed having some summer adventures, and it's been really nice to romp around and see new things and adventure and tucker myself out so that I can sleep very soundly at night, happily, with a full day of exploration behind me. I think it's harder to do that as an adult sometimes, but it might take a little more effort, and it's definitely worth it when we do. So, I hope you were adventuring too, as much as you can. In the meantime, you're getting a great night's rest to this story, A Summer in a Canyon, by Kate Douglas Wiggin. And now's the time for you to fluff up your pillow just how you like it. Feel yourself melt into your bed. Get real comfortable. Close your eyes and let me read to you. Chapter 1. Preparation and Departure. 1 to make ready, and 2 to prepare. It was 9 o'clock one sunny California morning, and Jeffrey Strong stood under the live oak trees in Las Flores Canyon with a pot of black paint in one hand and a huge brush in the other. He could have handled these implements to better purpose and with better grace, had not his arms been firmly held by 3 laughing girls, who pulled not wisely, but too well. He was further incommoded by the presence of a small urchin who lay on the dusty ground beneath his feet, fastening an upward clutch on the legs of his trousers. There were 3 large canvas tents directly in front of them, yet no one of these seemed to be the object of dissension, but rather a redwood board, some 3 feet in length, which was nailed on a tree nearby. Camp Frolic. Please let us name it Camp Frolic, cried Belle Winship, with a persuasive twitch of her cousin's sleeve. No, not Camp Frolic, pleaded Polly Oliver. Pray let us have Camp Ha-Ha. My heart is set upon it. As you are strong, be merciful, quoted Marjorie Noble, coaxingly. Take my advice and call it Harmony Camp. At this juncture, A lovely woman whose sweet face and smile made you love her at once came up the hill from the brookside. What? Still quarreling, children? She asked, laughingly. Let me be peacemaker. I've just asked the doctor for a name, and he suggests Camp Chaparral. What do you say? Belle released one coattail. That isn't wholly bad, she said, critically, while the other girls clapped their hands with approval, for anything that Aunt Truth suggested was sure to be quite right. Wait a minute, good people, cried Jack Howard, flinging his fishing tackle under a tree and sauntering toward the scene of action. Suppose we have a referee, a wise and noble judge. Call Hopya and let him decide this all-important subject. His name being sung and shouted in various keys by the assembled company, Hopya appeared at the door of the brush kitchen, a broad grin on his countenance, a plucked fowl in his hand. Jeffrey took the floor. Now, Hop, you know I have a name. You have a name. Everybody has a name. We want to name this camp, you know? Miss Belle, she says, Camp Frolic. Frolic, heap good time. Here he executed a sort of dance which was intended to express wild joy. Miss Pauline, she says, Camp Ha-Ha. Pretty funny. Ha 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 ha. Chorus joined in, and all to illustrate the subject. Miss Madge, she says Camp Harmony. Harmony, all the same. Quiet time. Plenty eat. Plenty to drink. Plenty to sleep. No fights. Not too much talk. Mrs. Winship, she says Camp Chaparral. You know? Chaparral. Hop. Now, what do you say? Hop seemed to regard the question with mingled embarrassment and amusement, but being a sharp and talkative guy, gave his answer promptly. I say Camp Chapel is a good name. Camp Chapel, all around. And so Camp Chaparral it was. The Redwood Board flaunted the assertion before the eyes of the public, which was a rather limited one, to be sure, in less than half an hour. And the artist, after painting the words in rustic letters a foot long, cut branches of the stiff, ungracious bushes, and nailed them to the tree in confirmation and illustration of the fact. He then carefully deposited the paint, pot in a secret place, where it might be out of sight, in touch of a certain searching eye and mischievous hand well known and feared of him, but before the setting sun had dropped below the line of purple mountain tops, a small boy, who will be known in these annals as Dickie Winship, might have been seen sitting on the empty paint pot, while from a dingy pool upon the ground, he was attempting to paint a copy of the aforesaid inscription upon the side of the too-patient goat, who saw no harm in the operation. He was alone, and very, very happy. And now I must tell you the way in which all this began. You may not realize it, dear young folks, but this method of telling a story is very much the fashion with grown-up people. And of course, I am not to blame, since I didn't begin it. The plan is this. You must first write a chapter showing all your people, men, women, children, dogs, and cats, in a certain place, doing certain things. Then, you must go back a year or two and explain how they all happened to be there. Perhaps you may have to drag your readers 25 years into the regions of the past and show them the first tooth of your oldest character. But that doesn't matter a bit. The further, the better. Then, when everybody has forgotten what came to pass in the first chapter, you are ready to take it up again, as if there had never been any parentheses. However, I shall not introduce you to the cradles, cribs, or trundle beds of the merry young campers, but merely ask you to retrace your steps one week and look upon them in their homes. On one of the pleasantest streets of a certain little California town stood, and still stands for aught I know, a pretty brown cottage, with its verandas covered with passion vine and a brilliant rose garden in front. It is picturesque enough to attract the attention of any passerby, and if you had chosen to peep through the crevices in the thick vines and look in at the open window, you might have thought it lovelier within than without. It was a bright day, and the gracious June sunshine flooded the room with yellow light. 3 young girls, perhaps 14 or 15 years old, were seated in different parts of the large room, plying industrious crochet needles and tatting shuttles. 3 pairs of bright eyes were dancing with fun and gladness, and another pair, the softest and clearest of all, looked out from a broad white bed in the corner, tired eyes, and oh so patient, for the health-giving breezes wafted in from the blue ocean and carried over the mountain tops and vine-covered slopes that so far failed to bring back Elsie Howard's strength and vigor. The graceful, brown-haired girl with the bright, laughter-loving face was Belle Winship. She of the dancing blue eyes, pink cheeks, and reckless little sunbonnet was Pauline, otherwise Polly Oliver. Did you ever know a Polly without some one of these things? Well, my Polly had them all, and besides, a saucy, freckled nose, a crown of fluffy, reddish-yellow hair, and a shower of coaxing little pitfalls called dimples round her pretty mouth. She made you think of a sunbeam, a morning songbird, a dancing butterfly, or an impetuous little crocus just out after the first spring shower. Dislike her? You couldn't. Approve of her? You wouldn't, always. Love her? Of course. You couldn't help yourself. I defy you. To be sure, if you prefer a quiet life, and do not want to be led into exploits of all kinds, invariably beginning with risk, attended with danger, and culminating in despair, you had better not engage in intimate friendship with Miss Pauline Oliver, but fix your affections on the quiet, thoughtful, but not less lovable girl who sits by the bedside stroking Elsie Howard's thin white hand. Nevertheless, I am obliged to state that Marjorie Noble herself, earnest, demure, and given to reflection, was Polly's willing victim. However, I've forgotten to tell you that Polly was as open and frank as the daylight, at once torrid and constant in her affections, brave, self-forgetting as well as self-filled, and that though she did not have a tongue just the least bit saucy, she used it valiantly in the defense of others. She'll come out all right, said a dear old-fashioned grandfather of hers whom she had left way back in a Vermont farmhouse. She's got to be purged a considerable dross, but she'll come out pure gold, I tell you. Pretty, wise, tender Marjorie Noble, with her sleek brown braids, her innocent, questioning eyes, her soft voice, willing hands, and shy, quiet manners. She will either end as the matron of an orphan asylum or as the head nurse in a hospital. So Belle Winship often used to say. But then she was chiefly celebrated for talking nonsense, and nobody ever paid much attention to her. But if you should crave a breath of fresh air, or want to believe that the spring has come, just call Belle Winship in, as she walks with her breezy step down the street. Her very hair seems instinct with life, with its flying tendrils of bronze brightness, and the riotous little curls on her brow and temples. Then, too, she has a particularly jaunty way of putting on her jacket, or wearing a flower or a ribbon. And as for her ringing peal of laughter, it is like a chime of silver bells. Elsie Howard, the invalid friend of the girls, was as dear to them as they were to each other. She kept the secrets of the firm, mourned over their griefs and smiled over their joys, was proud of their talents and tenderly blind to their faults. The little wicker rocking chair by the bedside was often made a sort of confessional, at which she presided, the tenderest and most sympathetic little priestess in the universe. And every afternoon, the piazza, with its lattice of green vines, served as a mimic throne room, where she was wont to hold high court, surrounded by her devoted subjects. Here, Jeffrey Strong used to often read to the assembled company David Copperfield, Alice in Wonderland, or snatches from the magazines, while Jack Howard lazily stretched himself under the orange trees and braided lariats, a favorite occupation with California boys. About 4 o'clock, Philip Noble would ride up from his father's fruit ranch, some 3 miles out on the San Marcos Road, and, hitching his little sorrel mare Chispa at the gate, stay an hour before going to the post office. This particular afternoon, however, was not one of Elsie's bright ones, and there was no sign of Cor or invalid Queen on the piazza. The voices of the girls floated out from Elsie's bedroom, while the boys, too, seemed to be somewhere in the vicinity, for there was a constant stirring about, as of lively preparation, together with noise of hammering and sawing. "If you were only going, Elsie, our cup of happiness would be full," sighed Belle. "Not only would it be full, Belle, but it would be running over, and we should positively stand in the slop," said Polly. "No, you needn't frown at me, miss. That expression is borrowed from no less a person than Sidney Smith." "Don't think any more about me," smiled Elsie. "Perhaps I can come down in the course of the summer. I know it will be the happiest time in the world, but I don't envy you a bit. In fact, I'm very glad you're going, because you'll have such a lovely budget of adventures to tell me when you come back." "When we come back, indeed," exclaimed Belle. "Why, we shall write a long round-robin letters every few days, and send them by the team. Papa says Pancho will have to go over the stage station at least once a week for letters, and any provisions we may need." "Oh, won't that be delightful? Almost as good as being there myself. And, Marjorie dear, you must make them tell me every least little thing that happens. You know they are such flyaways that they'll only write me when they learn to swim, or shoot a wildcat, or get lost in the woods. I want to know all the stupid bits. What you have for dinner, how and where you sleep, how your camp looks, what you do from morning till night, and how Dickie behaves." "I can tell you that beforehand," said Belle dolefully. "Jack will shoot him by mistake on Thursday. He will be kicked by the horses Friday, and bitten by tarantulas and rattlesnakes Saturday. He will eat poison oak on Sunday, get lost in the canyon Monday, be eaten by a bear Tuesday, and drowned in the pool Wednesday. These incidents will complete his first week, and if they produce no effect on his naturally strong constitution, he will treat us to another week, containing just as many mishaps, but no duplicates." By the time this dismal prophecy was ended, the other girls were in a breathless fit of laughter, though all acknowledged it was likely to be fulfilled. "I went over the camping ground last summer," said Marjorie. "You know it is quite near Papa's sheep ranch, and it is certainly the most beautiful place in California. The tents will be pitched at the mouth of the canyon, where there is a view of the ocean, and just at the back will be a lovely grove of wild oaks and sycamore trees." "Oh, won't it be delicious?" sighed Elsie. "I feel as if I could sniff the air this minute. But there, I won't pretend that I'm dying for fresh air, with the breath of the sea coming in at my south window, and a whiff of jasmine and honeysuckle from the piazza. That would be nonsense. Are your trunks packed?" "Trunks?" exclaimed Polly. "Would you believe it? Our clothes are packed in gunny sacks. We start in our camping dresses, with ulsters for the steamer and dusters for the long drive. Then we have, let me see what we have, a short, tough riding skirt with a jersey, a bathing dress, and some gingham morning gowns to wear about the camp at breakfast time. And flannel gowns for the night, and 2 pairs of boots, and a riding cap, and 1 hat apiece," added Marjorie. "But oh, Elsie, my dear, you should see Dickie in his camping suits," laughed Belle. They are a triumph of invention on Mama's part. Just imagine. One is of some enameled cloth that was left over from the new carriage cushions. It is very shiny and elegant. And the other, truly, is of soft tanned leather, and just as pretty as it can be. Then he has hobnail, copper-toed boots, and a hat that ties under his chin. Poor little man. He has lost his curls, too, and looks rather like a convict. Mrs. Howard came in at the door while Belle was speaking and laughed heartily at the description of Dickie's curious outfit. "What time do you start?" she asked, as she laid a bunch of mignonette on Elsie's table. "At 11 tomorrow morning," Belle answered. "Everything is packed. We are to start in the steamer, and when we come to our old landing, about 40 miles down the coast, we are to get off and take a 3-seated thoroughbrace wagon and drive over to Las Flores Canyon. Pancho has hired a funny little pack mule. He says we shall need one in going up the mountain, and that the boys can take him when they go out shooting, to carry the deer home, you know." "If I can bring Elsie down, as I hope, we must come by land," said Mrs. Howard. "I thought we could take 2 days for the journey, sleeping at the Burtons' ranch on the way. The doctor says that if she can get strength enough to bear the ride, the open-air life will do her good, even if she does nothing but lie in the hammock." "And be waited upon by 6 willing victims," added Polly. "And be fed on canned corned beef and tomato stew," laughed Belle. "Not a bit of it," said Marjorie. "Hop is a splendid cook, if he has anything to cook, and will feed her on broiled tidbits of baby venison, goat's milk, wild bees' honey, and cunning little mourning doves, roasted on a spit." "Good gracious," cried Belle. "What angel's food! Only I would soon devour a pet canary as a mourning dove. But to think that I've been trying to diet for a week in order to get intimate with suffering and privation. Polly came to stay with me one night, and we slept on the floor, with only a blanket under us, and no pillow. It was perfectly horrid. Polly dreamed that her grandfather ate up her grandmother, and I that Dickie stabbed the Jersey calf with a pickle fork." "Horrors," ejaculated Marjorie. "That's a pleasant prospect for your future bedfellows. I hope the gophers won't make you nervous, gnawing and scratching in the straw. I got used to them last summer. But we must really go, darling." And she stopped to kiss Elsie goodbye. "Well, I suppose you ought," she answered. "But remember, you are to start from this gate. Aunt Truth has promised me the fun of seeing you out of sight." The girls went out at a side door and joined the boys, who were busily at work cleaning their guns on the broad western porch. "How are you coming on?" questioned Polly. "Oh, finely," answered Jack, who always constituted himself chief spokesman, unless driven from the rostrum by someone possessed of a nimbler tongue. "I only hope your feminine togs are in half as good order." "We take no baggage to speak of," said Belle loftily. "Papa has cut us down to the very last notch, and says the law allows very few pounds on this trip." "The less the better," quoth Jeff, cheerily. "Then you'll have to go polish up your mental jewels." "Which you consider imitation, I suppose," sniffed Polly. "Perish the thought," cried Jack. "But speaking of mental jewels, you should see the arrangements Jeff had made for polishing his. He has actually stuck in 6 large volumes, any of which would be a remedy for sleeplessness. What are you going to study, Miss Polyonymous Oliver?" "Now, Jack, let us decide at once whether you intend to be respectful or not. I don't propose to expose myself to your nonsense for 2 months, unless you make me good promises." "Why, that wasn't disrespectful. It is my newest word. It simply means having many titles. I'm sure you have more than most people." Very well then. I'll overlook the irreverence this time and announce that I shall not take anything whatever to read, but simply reflect upon what I know already. That may last for the first week, said Belle slyly. But what will you do afterward? I'll reflect upon what you don't know, retorted Polly. That will easily occupy me 2 months. Fortunately, at the very moment this stinging remark was made, Phil Noble dashed up to the front gate, flung his bridle over the hitching post, and lifted his hat from a very warm brow. Hail, Chief of the Commissary Department, cried Geoffrey, with mock salute. Have you dispatched the team? Yes, everything is all right, said Phil, breathlessly, delivering himself of his information in spasmodic bursts of words. Such a lot of work it was. Here's the list. Pancho will dump them on the ground and let us settle them when we get there. Such a load. You should have seen it. Hardly room for him to sit up in front with Hop. Just hear this, and he drew a large document from what Polly called a backstairs pocket. 40 cans, corned beef, 4 guns, 3 Dutch cheeses, pickles, fishing tackle, flour, bacon, 3 bushels onion, crates of dishes, Jack's banjo, potatoes, short history of the English people, cooking utensils, 3 hair pillows, box of ginger snaps, 4 hammocks, coffee, cartridges, sugar, Macaulay's essays, Pond's extract, 16 hams, Bell's guitar, popcorn, molasses, salt, St. Jacob's oil, Conquest of Mexico, sack of almonds, flea powder, and smoked herring. Whew, I packed them all myself. In precisely that order, questioned Polly. In precisely that order, Miss Oliver, returned Phil, urbanely. Anyone who feels that said packing might be improved upon has only to mount the flea, Arabian yonder. The animal alluded to seized this moment to stand on 3 legs, hang his head, and look dejected. And, giving him the rein, speed o'er the track, less plain which leads to San Miguel, overtake the team, and repack the contents according to her own satisfaction. No butter, nor eggs, nor fresh vegetables, asked Marjorie. We shall starve. Not at all, quoth Jack. Polly will gracefully dispose a horse blanket about her shoulders, to shield her from the chill dews of the early morn, mount the pack mule exactly at the cock-crow every day, and ride to a neighboring ranch, where there are tons of aforesaid articles awaiting our consumption. Can you see me doing it, girls? Does it seem entirely natural? Asked Polly, with great gravity. Now hear my report as chairman of the Committee of Arrangements, said Geoffrey Strong, seating himself with dignity on a barrel of nails. The tents, ropes, toolboxes, bed sacks, blankets, furniture, etc., all went down on Monday's steamer, and I have a telegram from Larry's Landing saying that they arrived in good order, and that a gentleman who owns a mammoth wood car will take them up tomorrow when we go ourselves. The procession will move at 1 p.m., wind and weather permitting, in the following order. Chief Noble on his gallant bronco, Commander Strong on his ditto. Main conveyance or triumphal chariot, driven by aide-de-camp John Howard, and carrying Dr. and Mrs. Winship, our most worshipful and benignant host and hostess, Master Dick Winship, the heir apparent, 3 other young persons not worth mentioning, and 4 cans of best leaf lard, which I omitted to put with the other provisions. 4, wood cart containing baggage, driven by Senor Don Manuel Felipe Hilario Noriega of Deadwood Gulch. 5, 1 small tan terrier. Oh, Jeff, pray do stop. It's too much, cried the girls in a fit of laughter. Hurrah, shouted Jack, tossing his hat into a tall eucalyptus tree in his excitement. Tent life forever. Goodbye, ye pomps and vanities, chanted Belle, kissing her hand in imaginary farewell. Verily the noisy city shall know us no more, for we depart for the green forests. And the city will not be as noisy when you depart, murmured Jack, with an impudence that luckily passed unnoticed. If Elsie could only come too, sighed Polly. Wednesday morning dawned as bright and beautiful as all mornings are wont to dawn in Southern California. A light mist hung over the old adobe mission church, through which, with its snow-white towers and cold, clear-cut lines, it rose like a frozen fairy castle. Belle opened her sleepy eyes with the very earliest birds, and running to the little oval window, framed with white rose vines, looked out at the new day just creeping up into the world. Oh, dear and beautiful home of mine, how charming you are. I wonder if you are not really paradise, she said, dreamily. And the marvel is that rising sun did not stop a moment in sheer surprise at the sight of this radiant morning vision. For the oval window, opening to the east, was a pretty frame, with its outline marked by the dewy rose vine, covered with hundreds of pure, half-open buds and swaying tendrils. And she stood there in it, a fair image of the morning in her innocent white gown. Her luminous eyes still mirrored the shadowy visions of dreamland, mingled with dancing lights of hope and joyful anticipation, while in her fresh cheeks, which had not yet lost the roundness of childhood, there glowed, as in the eastern skies, the faint pink blush of the morning. The town is yet asleep, and in truth, it is never apt to be fairly wide awake. The air is soft and balmy, the lovely Pacific, a quivering, sparkling sheet of blue and gray and green flecked with white foam, stretches far out until it is lost in the rosy sky. And the mountains, all purple and pink and faint crimson and gray, stand like sentinels along the shore. The scent of the roses, violets and mignonette mingled with the cloying fragrance of the datura is heavy in the still air. The bending, willowy pepper trees show myriad bunches of yellow blossoms, crimson seed berries and fresh green leaves, whose surface, not rain-washed for mouths, is as full of color as ever. The palm trees rise without a branch, tall, slender, and graceful, from the warmly generous earth, and spread at last, as if tired by their straightness, into beautiful crowns of fans which sway toward each other with every breath of air. Innumerable butterflies and hummingbirds, in the hot, dazzling sunshine of noonday, will be hovering over the beds of sweet purple heliotrope and finding their way into the hearts of the passion flowers. But as yet, not the faintest whir of wings can be heard. Looking eastward or westward, you see either brown foothills, or, a little later on, emerald slopes whose vines hang heavy with the half-ripened grapes. And hark, a silvery note strikes on the dewy stillness. It is the mission bell, ringing for morning mass. And if you look yonder, you may see the Franciscan friars going to prayers, with their loose gray gowns, their girdle of rope, their sandaled feet, their jingling rosaries, and perhaps a Spanish senorita, with her trailing dress, a black shawl loosely thrown over her head, from out of the folds of which her two dark eyes burn like gleaming fires. A solitary man gallops by, with gaily decorated saddle and heavily laden saddlebags hanging from it. Perhaps he is taking home provisions to his wife and dark-eyed babies who live up in a little dimple of the mountainside, almost hidden from sight by the olive trees. And then a patient, hardy little Mustang lopes along the street, bearing on his back 3 laughing boys, one behind the other, on a morning ride into town from the mesa. The mist had floated away from the old mission now. The sun has climbed a little higher, and Belle has come away from the window in a gentle mood. Oh, Polly, I don't see how anybody can be wicked in such a beautiful, beautiful world. Said Polly, dipping her curly head deep into the water bowl and coming up looking like a little drowned kitten. When you want to be hateful, you don't stop to think whether you're looking at a cactus or a rose bush, do you? Very true, sighed Belle, quite silenced by this practical illustration. Now, I'll try the effect of the landscape on my temper by dressing Dickie while he dances about the room and plays with his tan terrier. But it happened that Dickie was on his very best behavior and stood as still as a signpost while being dressed. It is true, he ate a couple of matches and tumbled downstairs twice before breakfast, so that after that hurried meal, Belle tied him to one of the veranda posts, that he might not commit any act vicious enough to keep them at home. As he had a huge pocket full of apricots, he was in perfect good humor, not taking his confinement at all to heart, inasmuch as it commanded a full view of the scene of action. His amiability was further increased, moreover, by the possession of a bright new policeman's whistle, which was carefully tied to his buttonhole by a neat little silk cord, and which his fond parents intended that he should blow if he chanced to fall in too deeper during his rambles about the camp. We might as well state here, however, that this precaution proved fruitless, for he blew it all at times and seasons, and everybody became so hardened to its melodious shriek that they paid no attention to it whatever, history or fable thus again repeating itself. Mr. and Mrs. Noble had driven Marjorie and Phil into town from the fruit ranch, and were waiting to see the party off. Mrs. Oliver was to live in the Winship house during the absence of the family, and was aiding them to do those numberless little things that are always found undone at the last moment. She had given her impetuous daughter a dozen fond embraces, smothering in each a gentle warning, and stood now with Mrs. Winship at the gate, watching the three girls who had gone on to bid Elsie goodbye. "I hope Pauline won't give you any trouble," she said. "She is so apt to be impulsive and thoughtless." "I shall enjoy her," said sweet Aunt Truth, with that bright, cordial smile of hers that was like a blessing. "She has a very loving heart, and is easily led. How pretty the girls look, and how different they are. Polly is like a thistledown or a firefly, Marjorie like one of our home Mayflowers, and I can't help thinking my Belle like a sunbeam." The girls did look very pretty, for their mothers had fashioned their camping dresses with much care and taste, taking great pains to make them picturesque and appropriate to their summer life under the greenwood tree. Over a plain full skirt of heavy crimson, Serge Belle wore a hunting jacket and drapery of dark leaf green, like a bit of forest against a sunset. Her hair, which fell in a waving mass of burnished brightness to her waist, was caught by a silver arrow, and crowned by a wide soft hat of crimson felt encircled with a bird's breast. Marjorie wore a soft gray flannel, the color of a dove's throat, adorned with rows upon rows of silver braid and sparkling silver buttons, while her big gray hat had nothing but a silver cord and tassel tied round it in Spanish fashion. Polly was all in sailor blue, with a distractingly natty little double-breasted coat and great white rolling collar. Her hat swung in her hand, as usual, showing her boyish head of sunny auburn curls, and she carried on a neat chatelaine, a silver cup, and a little clasp knife, as was the custom in the party. "It's very difficult," Polly often exclaimed, "to get a dress that will tone down your hair and a hat that will tone up your nose, when the first is red and the last is a snub. My nose is the root of all evil. It makes people think I'm saucy before I say a word. And as for my hair, they think I must be peppery, no matter if I were really as meek as Moses. Now, there's Marjorie, the dear, darling mouse. People look at her two sleek braids, every hair doing just what it ought to do, and lying straight and smooth, and ask, "Who is that sweet girl?" There's something wrong somewhere. I ought not to suffer because of one small, simple, turned-up nose and a head of hair which reveals the glowing tints of autumn, as Jack gracefully says. "Here they come," shouted Jack from the group on the Howard's piazza. "Christopher Columbus, what gorgeousness! The flamingo, the dove, and the blue jay. Good morning, young ladies. May we be allowed to travel in the same steamer with your highnesses?" "You needn't be troubled," laughed Belle. "We shall not disclose these glories until we reach the camp. But you are dressed as usual. What's the matter?" "Why, the fact is," answered Geoffrey, "our courage failed us at the last moment. We donned our uniforms and looked like brigands, highway robbers, cowboys, firemen, anything but modest young men. And as it was too warm for ulsters, we took refuge in civilized raiment for today. When we arrive, you shall behold our dashing sombreros fixed up with peacock feathers, and our refulgent shirts, which are of the most original style and decoration." "Aboriginal, in fact," said Jack. "We have broad belts of alligator skin, pouches, pistols, bowie knives, and tan-colored shoes. But we dislike to flaunt them before the eyes of a city public." "Here they are," cried Geoffrey from the gate. "Uncle, and Aunt, and Dickie, and good gracious, is he really going to take that wretched tan terrier?" "Won't go without him," said Belle briefly. "There are cases where it is better to submit than to fight." So the last goodbyes were said, and Elsie bore up bravely, better, indeed, than the others, who shed many a furtive tear at leaving her. "Make haste and get well, darling," whispered the girls lovingly. Pray, dear Mrs. Howard, bring her down to us as soon as possible. We'll take such good care of her," teased Belle, with one last squeeze, and strong signs of a shower in both eyes. "Come, girls and boys," said kind Dr. Paul. "The steamer has blown her first whistle, and we must be off." Oh, how clear and beautiful a day it was, and how charmingly gracious Dame Ocean looked in her white caps and blue ruffles. Even the combination steamboat smell of dinner, oil, and close air was obliterated by the keen sea breeze. The good ship, or Isabel, plowed her way through the sparkling sunlit waves, traversing quickly the distance which lay between the young people and their destination. They watched the long white furrow that stretched in her wake, the cloud of black smoke which floated like a dark shadow above the laughing crests of the waves, and the flocks of seagulls sailing overhead, with wild, shrill screams ever and anon swooping down for some bit of food flung from the ship, and then floating for miles on the waves. How they sung "Life on the Ocean Wave," "Bounding Billow," and rocked in the cradle of the deep. How Jack chanted, "I wish I were a fish with a great long tail, a tiny little tittlebat, a wiggle or a whale, in the middle of the great blue sea. Oh my." "Oh, how I long to be there," exclaimed Philip, "to throw aside all the formal customs of a wicked world I abhor, and live a free life under the blue sky." "Why, Philip Noble, I never saw you inside of a house in my life," cried Polly. "Oh yes, you're mistaken. I've been obliged to eat most of my meals in the house and sleep there, but I don't approve of it, and it's a trial to be borne with meekness only when there's no remedy for it." "Besides," said Jack, "even when we are out of doors, we are shelling the reluctant almond, poisoning the voracious gopher, pruning grapevines and such. Now I am only going to shoot to eat and eat to shoot." "Hope you've improved since last year, or you'll have a low diet," murmured Phil in an undertone. "The man of genius must expect to be the butt of ridicule," sighed Jack meekly. "But you'll not repine. although your heartstrings break, will you?" said Polly, sympathizingly, especially in the presence of several witnesses who have seen you handle a gun. "How glad I am that I'm too nearsighted to shoot," said Geoffrey, taking the eyeglasses off that made him look so wise and dignified. "I shall lounge under the trees, read Macaulay, and order the meals." "I shall need an assistant about the camp," said Aunt Truth smilingly, "and I hardly think we'll have much time to lounge when everything else fails. There's always Dickie, you know." Geoffrey looked discouraged. "And furthermore, I declare by the nose of great Tam O'Shanter that I will cut down every tree in the vicinity ere you shall lounge under it," said Jack. "Softly, my boy. Hill's blue gum forest is not so very far away. You'll have your hands full," laughed Dr. Paul. Here, Marjorie and Belle joined the group after a quick walk up and down the deck. "Papa," said Belle excitedly, "we certainly are nearing the place. Do you see that bend in the shore? And don't you remember that the landing isn't far below?" Belle's bump of locality is immense. There are 19 bends in the shore, exactly like that one before we reach the landing. "How many knots an hour do you suppose this ship travels, my fair cousin?" asked Geoffrey. "I could tell better," replied Belle calmly, "if I could ever remember how many knots made a mile, or how many miles made a knot. But I always forget." "Oh, see, there's a porpoise," cried Jack. "Polly, why is a porpoise like a water lily?" But before he could say a guess, Phil, Jeff, and the girls had drawn themselves into a line, and with a whispered 1, 2, 3 to a secure good start, replied in concert, "We give it up." "What a deafening shout," cried Aunt Truth, coming out of the cabin. "What's the matter, pray?" "Nothing, Auntie," laughed Polly. "But we have formed a society for suppressing Jack's conundrums, and this is our first public meeting. How do you like the watchword?" Aunt Truth smiled. It was very audible, she said. "Yours is evidently not a secret society." "I wish I could find out who originated this plan," quoth Jack murderously. "But I suppose it's one of you girls, and I can't revenge myself. Oh, when will this barrier between the sexes be removed?" "I trust not in your lifetime," shuddered Polly, "or we might as well begin to stand round our dying beds at once." Thank you for listening to Sleepy. Good night.